Hey, on today's session, you're going to learn from Rob and Kennedy from the Email Marketing Show on how to grow your email list with your podcast and how to grow your podcast with your email list. Let's go. So Kennedy and Rob, I guess brief backstory on how I ran into you, Rob. First of all, you've got white hair, which sticks out on any Facebook profile. And then Rob, you've got red hair. Or silver, I should say. Not white. But I met you and heard about you first in the Hustle and Flowcharts in Matt and Joe's email or Facebook group. And you're always dropping great stuff in there. So good to finally connect. And we chatted about a month ago, which was awesome. So what struck me and interested me and why I wanted you to come on and share is your immense knowledge in email marketing. And also you have a podcast and you've done a really awesome job at tying those two together and making those two work and help each other as almost like a cycle and a system, right? So before we jump in, Kennedy, Rob, would love for you guys to jump and just share a little bit about like what you do and how you guys got started in email marketing.
Right.
To the fun stuff.
So before we get into, Rob will tell you the story, but basically, first of all, we are now on our third podcast, and this is the only time we've got it right. So we've fucked it up fantastically two times, and we're doing okay now at getting it right. So just getting the whole thing to work as an ecosystem is really difficult. What we do, I guess, before we tell you sort of how this all came about, is we help business owners, small businesses who have online courses, coaching programs, memberships, any kind of expertise to become the email marketing hero of your own business. And that's what this is about. This is really about figuring out how do you make sales and grow your business without actually having to talk to many people on the phone, or certainly pre-qualifying them a lot before you do that. And making more sales by doing really good email marketing. And we're not talking about that shady, dreary old email marketing, which was all about like email people until they buy, die, or unsubscribe, as somebody said to us fairly recently. It's not about that anymore because that doesn't work anymore, right? Anyway, so that's what we do. But I suppose, Rob, do you want to tell the story?
It's odd, actually, because we were talking earlier on today about the fact that we aren't actually email marketers. I just want to put that on the table for a second and say we are not email marketers. Like, you can't hire us to come and do your email marketing for you. We're people who have used email marketing in order to grow businesses, and businesses of all sorts of shapes and sizes. For example, we've been friends for nearly 20 years, and for nearly as long as that, we've both been performing as professional entertainers. So Kennedy is a mind reader. Anyone in the US would know that as a mentalist. Basically uses psychology and reading and understanding people and influence to make it look like you can read people's minds. Because when you've got that skill set, you basically can. And I'm a hypnotist. So I go on stage and hypnotize people and make them do crazy things for 2 hours and then send them back to their friends to look at the photos and the videos that were taken for blackmail purposes later. And so we've done that for, as I said, it's about 18 years now, all over the world, had a great career out of it, still do it now, love it. And one of the things that we did when we got into that independently as entertainers is we very quickly realized that actually that is a real business. It's not a thing you do for fun. I mean, it can be, but for us, it wasn't a thing we did for fun. It was a business. And therefore we had to learn how to brand ourselves, hence the hair. We had to, didn't say brand ourselves well, just brand ourselves. We had to learn how to brand ourselves, price ourselves so we could charge more than the competition and still get work, fill our diaries with stuff. And we rapidly realized that email played a massive part in doing that at scale. How do you get audiences into a venue? Email's a really great way to do it. How do you get clients to complete the booking that they were thinking about doing? Email's a great way to do it. So completely by accident and completely independently, we both became hooked with email marketing. And one day we decided we ended up swapping notes on the idea. Saying, well, I've been doing this and I've got this thing called Aweber. I'm building a list. It's really cool. And Kennedy said the same thing. And we became hooked on email marketing in a big way that has led us now to, over the last, 10 years or so, more than 10 years, figuring out how do we apply our principles of psychology from hypnosis and mind reading to email marketing to create deeper relationships, higher conversions, raving fans who want to hear from you on a daily basis, rather than people you just have to like blast with your sales message every time you want to sell, some pens or something.
I love that. I think on your website, I read like psychology-based email marketing. And that stuck out to me because you've seen all the different hooks and USPs and like unique mechanisms of like, how do these guys actually get results? Psychology-based marketing, psychology-based email marketing for me has always been something that's interesting. One of the guys I early dove into, gosh, what was his name? Man, he's also he's a magician, and he's a copywriter, and I forget he was in the Secret as well.
Oh, this is Joe Vitale.
Yeah, that's what it is. There, Joe Vitale. I read his book. Oh, it's the green covered one. I don't know. We'll link it in the show notes. I'll find it on my shelf.
You were talking about. Yes, I know exactly which one you're talking about because I have
Hypnotic.
it too.
Is it Hypnotic something?
Hypnotic marketing. Hypnotic marketing.
There we go. That is a great book and got me into really understanding why that stuff is important and how that plays a role in marketing. So super cool. I didn't know that little backstory that you shared, Rob. So thank you. But to get into a little bit about how you said before, you guys messed up 2 podcasts before this. So I'm curious to hear what were the mistakes? Did they relate to email marketing? And how did you fix them?
And we're really good at it, by the way. Like, we're spectacularly good at messing up a podcast. So,
oh yeah, if that's what we're going to talk about, I think one of the things we've done wrong a lot in podcasting, or in all of our marketing, actually, is, and it's a discussion we constantly have with people, is having too wide, too broad a top of funnel. Right, the top of your funnel. Ours was like, we had a podcast where we interviewed some of the best people in marketing, like John Lee Dumas, Todd Brown, like amazing people in marketing. The podcast had probably the best name of any marketing podcast ever. It was called 3 Marketers Walk Into a Podcast. Great name, great brand.
Good podcast.
Too broad.
Yeah.
Great podcast. Too broad. Yeah. Because getting people from talking about Facebook ads and then Pinterest and everything about marketing, down to email marketing, down to our software platform, which is a survey and quiz-based platform for marketers. That was too long a journey.
Yeah.
So that's the big first thing we didn't figure out. The second thing we didn't figure out was that there is a 2-way process between our email system and the podcast. In fact, the bigger lesson out of that really is trying to figure out, where does your podcast actually fit into your marketing? Because you're not going to get famous off your podcast. It's very unlikely you're going to get famous off your podcast. But what you do need to do is, first of all, you need to start. So that's good. Like, you need to start. We started 3. That's great. So we got good at starting. Yeah. The next thing you need to do is figure out, where the hell does it fit? Mm-hmm. So it needs to fit in 2 really distinct places. The first one is, you need to take listeners and turn them into email subscribers. And I don't mean either email subscribers or Instagram followers. No, it has to be email. And the reason it's got to be email subscribers is that's the only channel. Email's the only channel where you own the data. If you fall out with your email marketing platform, let's say you're on, I don't know, Active Campaign, and you have a fallout with them, you have a bit of a Barney with them, it's all right, because you just download the CSV file of all your contacts, and you go to ConvertKit or Infusionsoft or anybody else, and you upload it there, and as long as you're being compliant, they'll take you. That's fine. If you fall out with Facebook, which happens to people every day, right? Yeah. They get closed down, you get put in Facebook jail. We all hear about it. If that happens, there's no data to download and there's nowhere else to upload it to. So you're screwed. So we do need to move people across to your email list, because that's the place where you can actually do some selling. Because, selling on your podcast, can you imagine if that's what happened? Like, imagine, right, at the end of the show, we will end. And by the way, we've got this $7,000 program, and then we're going to stack all the bonuses, and that's worth $23,000. And then now you can have it today for just $5,000. Like, imagine if that's how it works. Well, of course, it doesn't work like that. But we do have to make sales. It has to be part of your funnel, right? Mm-hmm. And so the way it does that is you move people from your podcast into your email marketing world, where you can treat them really, really well. You can give them actual value in those emails, so they actually want to open your emails. They're not avoiding them like that horrible ex-girlfriend who you sort of try not to make eye contact with when you see. Instead, they're actually looking forward to your emails and you get to make offers. And we're going to give you some strategies today. Hopefully we'll have time to get people from listening to your podcast onto your email list, because that's something else we've been terrible at. Like, we're really good at email marketing, really good at it. But we struggled for like ages to get people from listening to the show to coming and joining our list. And we'll share with you how we've done that. So that's the first thing. The other part of it is what Rob's going to talk about, which is to do with how you do it the other way around. And that is to use your email list to power your podcast.
Right.
I think it's really important to remember, because we definitely thought that the podcast was the top bit. That was what got people in the front door. That was the big flashing neon sign outside the nightclub that got people in. And then basically we sort of assumed that once they're on our list and now we're going to sell them stuff, they probably don't listen to the podcast anymore. Or once they're paying us every month to be in our membership program, the league, they're not going to be listening to the podcast anymore. But actually we just like realized over a period of time that our stupidity, and realized actually these people need to be constantly sent back to the podcast, because that's what's going to deepen the relationship with them. Let's face it, we email our list every day, 365 days a year.
Wow.
Sometimes more than once a day. But if they're hearing from us every day in their inbox, and they're hearing from us multiple times a day on social, and they're going to get a podcast once a week, that's going to be great. But let's face it, however good your podcast is, there are going to be more people who don't think, oh, I must go and listen to that latest episode, than think, oh, I must. There's going to be more people who don't do that than do. So we've got to remind them about it. And so we realized, let's make sure it's in our signature in the bottom of every email we send to our list. Let's make sure it's hammered home in our welcome sequence when people first join our list. Because some people are going to come into our world having not come through the podcast. How rude. So we need to tell them it exists. So let's do that everywhere that we can. So it's very much a cycle. Like, the podcast can bring people in, but so can our list building efforts. And we can move people from the podcast to the list, and from the list back to the latest podcast episode again. So it becomes a sort of flywheel, I hate the word, wheel sort of process that just keeps the whole thing driving.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. It's so true. And I found that in my experience as well. Like, people buy from you, but guess what? They're still listening to the podcast. They're still reading your free emails. They're still in your Facebook group asking for the free stuff you're putting out to get leads, which I find hilarious. I'm like, you're in the course. You paid for this already. Like, it's in module 6. But
yeah, totally. This happens to us. So it's funny. We do these daily emails, which are usually a funny, fun story. And they're followed by a lesson that you can implement about your email marketing. And then sometimes, almost always, we'll tell you about a product or something that we've got going on, and some kind of offer. And when people buy that offer, it's usually talking about our membership, which is called the League of Email Marketing Heroes, the League. And we will tell people about that. And then people join the League, and automatically in our system, if you've got the tag that says you're in the League, you've got that segment activated. Yeah. It excludes you from getting our daily emails. Yeah. The amount of people, of our members, who come to us and go, I've stopped receiving your daily emails. Can I have those, please? And we're like, what? Those emails that sell you on the thing you've already bought? And they're like, yeah, I already want that, please. It is crazy. But if you do it right, you do it in a really valuable way. Like, think about it. If the emails you're going to send have value in and of themselves, even if there was no offer in them, then you're doing something really, really good. But I suppose it does beg the question, like, how do we get people from our podcast onto our email list, and we can sell them our coaching services, our courses and stuff like that? And I think what we have to do is we have to figure out, first of all, we have to give them a really good reason to go and do that. So we have to give them what's known as a lead magnet, or a bribe, which is essentially what it is, isn't it? It's like saying, hey, give us your email address and we'll give you something cool. And there's a few different things you could have, and we've tested a few different things. So, for example, you could put together like a free report or something like that. That's a really good way of getting people from your show. It's not the best way. For us, it's not the best way. Another really good one. Go on, Rob.
One thing I think is really important to point out here is that remember to tell them about it, because we did a really horrible thing for a long time and just didn't mention it. It wasn't like we had our little script thing we're going to talk about, and we just didn't really bring it up.
Didn't mention what? Just so I'm clear.
Sorry, mention this amazing free thing you could get. So for a while, it was a free flash sale email campaign that we gave away. And for the longest time, we just didn't mention it on the podcast. Like, people just couldn't go and get it for, I don't know, over a year of our old podcast. And for a long time into this one, you just couldn't get it. So that was a mistake that we learned the hard way. It sounds stupid when you say it,
but the solution to it's really simple. have a script for your podcast. We have literally got a script. Like, and our guests are always surprised. Like, we're like, okay, just adjust the script. We're going to say this about you. Is that okay? And then we have it on my screen here, and Rob has it on his screen. And we're like, okay, the first thing that happens is I say this, then Rob says this, then I say this, and then I say, by the way. So, and then we get into the guest, and then it's not the interview bit's not scripted, but the intro and the other bits like around it. If it's in the script, you can't miss doing it. You know, and I think being a performer, we're used to scripts, like, because, you know, when you do comedy or when you do mind reading or you do hypnosis, like, we don't make those things up every night, even though it looks like we might be off the cuff. Yeah. No, like, they're in the script. So, so make sure you tell people about it. And this is interesting because it brings up the question of when do you tell them about it? And we heard a bit of advice, and I'm not mentioning who it was because I really love the guy and I really respect him. But this is the one bit of advice we took from him that just didn't work. And the bit of advice was this: don't mention your lead magnet, your reason to join your list, until near the end of the episode. And the reason for that is those listeners won't have built up trust and rapport with you yet. That's a mistake. And it's the mistake we were making. And it cost us hundreds, if not thousands of leads, of contacts and new subscribers. The reason is that is basing the idea that everybody who listens to your podcast is new. They're not.
Right.
Most of the people who are listening to your podcast are repeat. So we're talking about classic advertising of repetition. So, and also near the end of your podcast, if you're doing an interview podcast or whatever format, that's when you're going to have the least number of listeners.
Exactly. Look at the stats. Like, it goes like this.
Just watch it.
Go like this.
No, it does not go. No one goes, I'm going to listen to this episode from 8 minutes in. Never mind that. Yeah, nobody does that. Nobody does that. So, what the time to mention your reason to go and join your list, and we'll come up with some really compelling ones in a moment and share them with you. But is at the beginning and at the end. That's it, and tie it in to why. So I'll give you what ours is now, and you can literally just use this if you want. Ours is. We talk about the episode's going to be about this week's episode of the Email Marketing Show is about how to move people from your podcast onto your email list. Now, at the end of this episode, we don't want you feeling alone with all your questions. Don't be wondering, how do I apply this? No, we've got a free Facebook group. Come and join us in the free Facebook group where we'll be talking about this exact thing. Just go to your Facebook and go and look for the Email Marketing Show community. We'll see you there. And then we go into the show. And then at the end of the interview, or the end of the main bit of content, if it's a Rob and I episode, because our show alternates between a guest and not a guest, then we'll say it again. Oh, wasn't that great? Yeah, now you've probably got lots of questions. Don't be alone with those questions. So it's really important that I think you shouldn't, or we should try and avoid just going, if you want this thing, and make it sound like a commercial suddenly dropping in, because that jolts people's brains. You want it to feel like it's a continuation of this conversation they're having with you. Yeah. So that's a really strong thing for us, isn't it, Rob?
Yeah, definitely.
I love that. So to recap, I want to recap here. So you guys have a custom script you put in, you kind of adjust depending on if it's a guest or if it's an intro or if it's just you guys. Is that on Google Docs? Like, walk me through how that's happening. Is that like you've got your Zoom on and you've got Google Docs, you're just kind of off to the side, so you can just go ahead and say, hey guys, what's up? Welcome to the show. Today we talk about X, Y, and Z. On the show we have Kennedy on. He's going to talk about blah, blah, blah. Is that how that works? Like, you guys just adjusting that on the fly on Google Docs?
Yeah.
Go on.
And the beauty of Google Documents is that Kennedy has it open. I have it open. Obviously, we can both see, because it's in that collaborative mode, we can both see the other one, like highlighting a bit of text. So like, for example, there's sometimes like we do a thing where we do the subject line of the week. And I'm not going to lie, sometimes we've forgotten to like put the subject line in. So we've forgotten to dig through stats. So Kennedy might whiz to the bottom and go, Rob, you're a buck, you've forgotten to put the thing in. And I have to go, oh crap. So I think it's a really, particularly with two guests, it's a particularly useful thing. Yeah. But yeah, we just use Google Documents. It's there all the time. It's a permanent living document. So literally 10 minutes before every episode, we hop on and we just go, great, let's quickly pop a bio in. Let's figure out what we're going to say to introduce them. We introduce each other with a stupid fact about ourselves. So for example, Kennedy can tell the difference between Coca-Cola and Pepsi, and I cry at penguins. So like, we'll stick that in at the beginning of the episode, so that every episode, Kennedy introduces me with a fact, I introduce him with a fact. Our listeners get to know us a little bit better in stupid ways.
Yeah.
And And yeah, and that works really well. And literally, we just have it in that living. So it's one document. It's got the solo episode script. It's not a solo episode, is it? It's two of us. But the solo episode script, as we call it, and then the guest episode script underneath it.
I love that. That's super important for people because like people always wonder like how the mechanics, like how's that work? You have a script, you write it down. Is it on Google? Is it on? So Google Docs, it's open. You guys adjust it, tweak it to the guest, or if it's solo, the first like for that first 10 minutes, then it goes into a natural script. One of the other things, super important things you mentioned there is like you say the call to action twice, beginning and end. Super important. I used to have that mistake too of like, or make that mistake early on in my career. I was like, I only mentioned the call to action at the beginning, or sorry, at the end. And you look at the stats, and this is I stumbled upon it because I look at the numbers. Like, okay, there's hundreds of people listening here. There's about 100 people listening here. I'm gonna go with the lion's share of the listeners, right? Mm-hmm. So great points, guys. I really love that advice. I want to dive into a little bit about like how you guys or what you found for you, what's worked best when it comes to taking listeners and converting them into email subscribers. Like what email opt-in or lead magnets have worked best. And how you're structuring those, or any insights about like what you guys found really works and moves people into that next phase of your funnel.
Totally. So there's a few different things. I mean, depending on what your structure's like, and if you've got a team or you're working solo, you've got an outsourced team or not, you can do various things. If you've got a really elaborate team, you can do what some people do, which is working really well, which is create an asset which is specific for that episode. So you've just talked about a thing. I've got a cheat sheet, a worksheet, or something for this episode. Now, that requires a lot more preparation, probably a couple of team members. And if you're at that stage, definitely do that. I think that's a really, really nice thing to do. The next version down of that, which I think is really interesting. A lot of people have interview shows, which I think is a really, really good format in some ways. We can talk about the discussion around why interview only is challenging sometimes, but interview shows are great. But then what you also want to do in an interview show is you want to also establish your authority and show your leadership. And that's what you've just done there, obviously, which is talk about your thoughts on it. And it's a great thing to do. But a really great other way of doing that is to say at the end of a guest episode, now, great. By the way, that was a great interview with Rob and Kennedy talking about email marketing. I want to share you my thoughts and my takeaways from this episode. Mm-hmm. And I do that in our private podcast, which is only for subscribers. So they can now go and subscribe by putting their email address in to hear this private members only. It's a free membership. It's not paid for. Yeah. A free membership inside of all they're going to do is opt into your list, and they're going to get sent the link to the video file or the audio file of you talking about your takeaways from it. So the good thing is it's extra content, but there's no extra creative for you because the guests have already supplied that. That's something Rob and I used to do, actually. When we used to have the old podcast, the one before this one, we used to finish a guest episode. It was only guest interviews every week. And then we would do a video of our sort of takeaway on it. It is effective. The reason we stopped doing it was just time capacity. We just did not have the time to make that work. That's another really good one. There's a whole bunch of things. Rob, you want to cover?
I mean, eventually we've taken a totally different route altogether. Obviously, we've given away a free report. I have to say, we're like obsessed with tracking everything. So with our like lead magnets and stuff, we track where people have come from. So we track whether they've come from our podcast, whether they've come from a Facebook ad, and which Facebook ad they've come from, or whatever. So one of the things we did pay attention to was just how many people were listening to our podcast and then thinking, "Oh, I'm going to go and opt in for that free report, that free PDF, that free email campaign we gave away." And it did pretty well. When we switched to what we're doing now, which, as Kennedy said earlier, is our Facebook group, we are seeing massively higher numbers of people coming in. And whilst we can't track it as directly, we do ask people where they heard about us, and they say the email marketing show, your podcast, the words to that effect. And so that gives us a really good clue. It's not quite as trackable, but it's pretty solid. And so that means that we're actually seeing much higher numbers coming in from our podcast to our group than we were from our podcast to a lead magnet, which is interesting.
Yeah. And what's really interesting is the really important thing, if you're going to duplicate that model, is we've named the group the same as the podcast. So the podcasts are called the Email Marketing Show. The group's called the Email Marketing Show Community. So there's no thinking required. So we just say, go and search your Facebook for the Email Marketing Show Community. We've also created like a little a redirect URL. So if people are just on their on their normal browser, on Chrome or whatever, you can type in robandkennedy.group, and that will forward you there as well. So you want to give people different ways. So this all leads to the fact that on the way into the group, we ask for their email address. And this is the really important thing. We made a little change to how we ask for that email address, and we saw a significant number of more people giving their email address. And it's this. We were saying, hey, do you want to receive our free daily emails about how you can improve and make more sales with your email marketing? We'll also give you a free gift, which is our 4-day flash sale email campaign, every email you need to make some sales in a quick succession. If you please put your email address in here, bang. I was doing okay. It was doing all right. But then we added the words in brackets, in like parentheses, we added the words, this is not a requirement to join the group. And by adding that, we get significantly more people giving it to us. Like a bit of a reverse psychology.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's super interesting.
One thing I think is really interesting and useful to know about the group is this. If we talked about so most people have like a lead magnet, they give it away, they mention it in their podcast, and they do that for an extended period of time because they don't have the team or the capacity or the interest to create a new asset every time. And so what that means is that there is a certain amount of like ad blindness occurs on the podcast, where every week somebody tunes into your podcast and you say, and don't forget, you can go and download my free report, 17 ways to make the perfect blancmange. Just go to this website address.com and go over there now. And the truth is, what's really cool about a Facebook group is even once somebody has, so with a lead magnet, once somebody's opted in for it, that becomes quite dull to listen to because they've already got it and they're unlikely to go and review it. With a Facebook group, once somebody has joined, the only thing that can possibly do is remind them they've joined, make them go, oh, I should go and check out that group again because it was good, and feel like they're part, that I'm already part of that. Like, you know, that inclusiveness. You don't get that with a free PDF, but you do with a group. So the more they hear you mention it week after week after week, all they do is feel more included and like they're already part of a thing. They don't feel alienated. So it works beautifully for new listeners who are not yet a member and for people who are already a member.
Right. Good point. Good point. I love that. I'm really interested. So that's a great, first of all, it's recapping. That's a great distinction. Like, hey, you do not need this to be a member of the group. It's totally cool. If you say no, we'll still let you in. I did that with my group as well. And for me personally, I feel like it lets people know, like, I only want you on the stinking email list if you want to actually hear from me. And I don't want you to put like junk email Lewis@gmail.com. You know what I mean? You know, it's like, okay, well, thanks, man. I appreciate for adding me to your junk email list. Because we've all got those. I mean, I feel like all the marketers I know have like a fake email per se to add if you don't want to get the junk emails, but you just want the free thing or just to get access. So having that, like you guys said, is super smart. I want to definitely talk about, is this something I get a lot of questions about, and that is email indoctrination. How do you use your podcast in your email indoctrination to like welcome new people into your world, get more downloads, and eventually get them to trust you enough to say, okay, I'm going to put my credit card out and I'm going to buy the course or the membership or whatever it may be.
It's interesting. We have a sequence when somebody first joins our list that we call the getting to know you sequence. And the point of that entire sequence, it's 4 emails sent over 4 days. And the intention of that, the whole point of it is it sets people up to understand who we are, trust us, and a lot of influence, a lot of persuasion that we have to do is about building beliefs. In fact, that's all influence and selling is. It's about building beliefs. So it's about building all the beliefs that we need someone to have before they can become a customer. The biggest problem with most people's indoctrination or welcome sequence compared to like a getting to know you sequence, the big difference is they're not actually doing anything useful. You want it to be useful. Each of those emails need to do something. One of them needs to, well, every single one of them needs to train people that they should click links when you send them a link.
Right.
That because when they do, they'll get something good. They'll see something cool. They'll find something funny, or they'll find something useful. The other thing you want to do is build up your authority and build up your trust. You also want to build up expectations and tell people, this is what's going to happen, by the way. So people say, what, you guys email 365 days a year? Yeah, we do. We don't upset people. The reason we don't upset people is because we tell you in that getting to know you sequence that we're going to email you every day with something cool that's really going to help you.
Yeah.
So now if we don't email you every day, we're breaking our promise. That's one of the other big things you have to stack up in that getting to know you sequence is, when I say something, it is true. So are you building that belief that when I tell you that Kennedy's the one with the white hair and Rob's the one with the red hair, and we are closing keynote speakers who speak at events around the world, We prove it. We have photos of us closing keynotes at big marketing events and big industry events. So we're building this thing. Oh, these guys tell the truth. So, and also the getting to know you is about two-way getting to know you. That's why it's called getting to know you. It's about you as the marketer, you as the person with the list, getting to know the subscriber. How do you do that? You use surveys, use quizzes, ask people to click on links to segment them so you can understand, okay, so one of our getting to know you sequence emails, one of the 4, ask them to go and fill out a 2-question quiz. They click on the thing, they take a 2-question survey, and now we can point them in the direction of the right pieces of content and the right offers, the right products from us. That's going to help them with that big problem fastest.
Right.
Right.
I love that. Keep going. Sorry. Cut you off.
Yeah, no, that's great. You can tell me you love me anytime. No, it's fine. So that's the first thing. We get to know them. We get to help them fastest. And we use a tool. We actually are the founders of a software tool. You don't know this either, actually, called ResponseSuite, which is the survey tool, which is built for segmentation for these kind of surveys. The other thing we have to do, though, in those getting to know you sequences is they have to get to know us. So we have to get to know them. They have to get to know us. So we tell them facts about ourselves. We tell them the context from which we build our beliefs around ourselves. We have to remind them, Kennedy's a psychological mind reader. Rob's the hypnotist. This is how this applies to you. This is how it makes it different. Now we understand you. Now we can help you. You should click, because when you click on the links to our stuff, you get good stuff that you enjoy. All of these, and there's many, 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 many more that we break down throughout these 4 emails. But so doing all of that, one of the things we do, I think it's in the first email, is we say, by the way, these emails are great, but there's other ways you can connect with us, because we're about showing up where you need to hear from us. So we have a Twitter chat over on Twitter every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. It's called #email-hour. If you're on Twitter, come and check it out. We tell them that. It's a bullet point of like 5 different things. We've got this podcast. If that's not how you found out about us, it's released every Wednesday. It's called the Email Marketing Show. Click here. If you like this thing, that our Facebook group, here that is the Email Marketing Show community. So we point them at lots of different things so they can go and hang out with us in the places they want to hang out. And that's really, really important, because it's a strategy we call becoming 3D. You want to become not one-dimensional. You don't want to be just the person they hear in their earphones when they're running at the gym. Right. You also want to be the person they see stuff from on Instagram. You want to see the person they see tweets from and Facebook posts and emails, everything.
I like it. Dude, so Kennedy, one of the things you said in there was like instilling beliefs so that there's no objections, or they believe you and they have all the beliefs and all the things they need in place to get an objectionless close or objectionless sale. And it's an easy transition or easy transaction for them to make. It's a no-brainer. I think that's really important. Now, question for you. Do you guys link any podcast episodes in there specifically? Like, hey, like check out this episode because it instills a belief, or like, how do you kind of use the content that you're making on the show? I love how you're like linking all of like the ways they can connect with you, because everyone's different how they consume content. But I'm curious there. Yeah. Like and also the survey, we can get into that in a second here, because I've got a personal question for you on that one that we're using in our business, we're thinking about. So yeah, how does the podcast content or specific episodes play in at all, if they do?
So one of the things that we're really big on, we don't do it in the welcome sequence, but throughout our email. So in the welcome sequence, we just tell people about the podcast in the get to know you sequence. For the rest of our email marketing, though, we're really big advocates of using small bits of content in order to pre-frame something before somebody goes and checks it out. So one of the things we do whenever we're working on some new promotion is to sit and say, okay, great, we're going to put this product together. What is it? And we literally document this out, partly as as part of the process of writing sales copy. But if the sales copy is already done, we'll also do it as part of like the email promotion planning, is to say, what is it that everyone needs to believe or understand or think before they can possibly buy this product? And then we'll look for the bits of content that we already have that support that belief. And because with a podcast, you are building the ultimate library of easy to consume content on every topic imaginable. Like, you want to be in a position, don't you, where somebody could ask you any question and you can say, oh, there's a podcast 392 on that, go and check it out. Now, our podcast is growing now to the point where if there's not an entire episode on it, there's probably definitely a snippet within an episode where we talk about it. Right. So one of the things that we will do is we will use podcast episodes in order, and other things like videos too, in order to pre-frame and pre-build up those understandings and expectations in people before we do any sort of promotion. So We're going to do a list building thing. Okay, great. Let's have a podcast episode, which is about 6 amazing lead magnet ideas. Okay, great. Let's get that out first. That way people know what a lead magnet is. They know why it's important. They know what 6 different types of them are. They can imagine themselves having one. They might even know they've already got one because of something they did ages ago. That does a whole bunch of the heavy lifting for us so that when we sweep in with the offer, and it doesn't particularly feel like it's intentional. It doesn't feel like we're saying, now we're going to sell you something tomorrow. So first, go and listen to this podcast episode. That's going to set you up. For it. Because what we want to happen is we want to, if you've ever watched if you watch Kennedy's show, you might see that at the end, there's this big reveal of something that somebody or people in the audience were thinking of. But actually, he then exposes that actually this happened because of a bunch of things that happened throughout the course of the show that influenced that decision. That decision at the end was inevitable. The reason that works is that over a period of time, the audience are collecting all these bits of stuff subconsciously so that at the right moment, the decision they're asked to make just makes sense. We do the same thing with email so that people consume our content and we know they've consumed it because they've clicked to it. And therefore, when those people, for clicking on it, now go into a sales sequence that sells them the thing, they've already collected all the bits of information they need along the way in order for us to not need to mention it at the point of sale. But everything makes sense to them and everything feels right to them. And it feels like for a sale to happen, it just has to feel like they're the right person at the right time with the right offer. And if you get some of that done in advance, that's how that feels.
Interesting.
Really good email marketing actually makes sales pages kind of redundant. The thing is, if you've built up the beliefs, what's the great thing about doing it by email is you can control the cadence at which they consume that information. As you put it all on one sales page, that person decides how they're going to read it. They're going to scroll at the price first and then up and then down. Yeah, and then back up. That's what's going to happen. As you do with email, actually, most of the time, our best in fact, I think all of the time, I don't like to say all the time in case it's not true, but our plainest, simplest sales pages sell the best. And I think it's because more stuff on the sales page can only create more friction. So by time releasing it through email, that really does help just to sort of support what Rob was saying there. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, cool. So the podcast is used as a way to instill beliefs and just periodically, right? Like you guys, like you're saying, Rob was saying, you're pulling out those pieces and kind of using them in the email sequence leading up to selling something, right? So you guys are referencing certain episodes, certain parts of episodes to get people, hey, listen to this, check this out. That way, when the day comes, whatever the open cart day comes, you guys are like, hey, like you've clicked, you've listened, probably this makes sense to you if you're that person now who's got all these beliefs instilled with them from the past couple of emails. That is really, really brilliant. Now, going forward, have you guys thought about using the podcast, more like creating series of podcasts, for example, leading up to a sale or anything like that, or kind of what's on the horizon or any new things?
No, I mean, we don't do it that way. And I think the reason is because we like to get the maximum longevity out of episodes, which is one of the reasons we don't, this is a strange one, we don't do, this is episode 26, this is episode 27. We do not do episode numbers because if somebody joins your podcast right now and they start listening, they're a new listener and they listen to the newest episode, which everyone does, and you're at episode 82, and then they find an episode, which is episode 3, they're going to think, psychologically as us human beings, we think that's old.
Yeah.
Nobody wants old. What we want is fresh. We want new. We all want to know what's cutting edge, even though that stuff in our show is always the same. It's always as relevant, right? So we ditched episodes. We don't mention episode numbers in the show. Instead, we use our personalities being fun and entertaining to come up with funny places for the show notes to be. So we had one which was at emailmarketingheroes.com/underpants, emailmarketingheroes.com/doodle, this kind of thing. So we used that instead. But yeah, so we got rid of the numbers thing in order to make it so that these things were no longer felt like they were chronological, even though they are. Yeah. And so, no, we've never done series because that will sort of lock it in. The other dangerous thing, I think, with series, and I've fallen out with other podcasts that I loved, is if I'm a listener to your show and now you're in a phase of a series about a thing I don't care about. Like suddenly you're about to launch a Pinterest course. So now you've got 3 weeks or 4 weeks of content about Pinterest. I couldn't give a toss about Pinterest. You've now lost me as a listener. Whereas at least if this week's about Pinterest and I couldn't give a toss about it, at least next week it's going to be about something good, you know? So I think that might be probably not what I would do.
Gotcha. Last question about segmenting your email lists is how does that happen for you guys? Like for us, I'll give you kind of a personal example. I love some coaching on the spot here. Some advice. We've got 2 people on our podcast list. People who want to start a podcast, but don't have either the time or know how to do it. And that's why they're on here to learn. Or B, they have a podcast. This is, I'd say, the majority. B, they have a podcast, but it's neither growing nor monetizing the way they'd like it to be. They're not getting the maximum usage or benefit from it. And they're there to learn how to do that and do it better. What's the easiest way for you if you're someone who's like looking at like other business owners in this podcast Facebook group? They probably already have, or listening to the show, they already have a list, but it's probably a mixture of people and they don't really know how to segment or target them. And I know it may vary from software to software, but for you, what's your advice on like what's the easiest way to do so?
Right. So this is the thing, right? You could easily, like, obviously we own ResponseSuite. So I'll tell you about the way we do it with surveys, because it's the way we do it. But literally the way we do it for our members when they join our membership, the league, and when people join our list is we send them a quick win quiz. And that is what it's about. It's about saying, hey, we want to help you get the quickest win possible for your biggest challenge, where you're at, your type of business. So we're going to ask you 3 questions or whatever it's going to be. Yeah. And they're going to be just multiple choice questions. Click, click, click. We want people to be clicking, not thinking, right? If they have to type, they're thinking. It's going to take up too much time. They're not going to complete it. So all we're going to ask in your case, right? If I want to figure out where they're at, I want to know, are they just getting started? Do they already have, or are they on that journey? And then I want to ask them, what is their biggest frustration with getting the next point? And so all I would do is put a 2 or 3 question survey together, a quiz together, using something like ResponseSuite or other tools. And I would just ask them, click the things that are relevant to you. And then because these tools, because in this case, ResponseSuite integrates directly with your ActiveCampaign or your Keep or whatever the heck you're using.
Yeah.
You now can just, that will tag them. So that person will get tagged when they complete the survey saying, this person is a beginner thinking about doing a podcast and they've got no budget. So now you can do 2 things simultaneously with the way we do it. Is 1, you will, 3 things. You'll push all of that data into your ActiveCampaign or email marketing tool. Mm-hmm. Secondly, you'll tag them with the things they've suggested that they need help with. And third, when they hit submit, they'll immediately we use a tool, a methodology inside ResponseSuite called Smart Redirect, which is you take them to a different thank you page, which helps them with the exact thing they need straight away. So now they're on a page which goes, thank you. So it looks like the thing you really need help with is this. Here's a podcast episode that helps you with that. And here's our program that will help you with that. Or do you want to book a call, depending on where they are in their journey? So now what you've got is you've got an immediate, for that person, they've got an immediate satisfaction of this person can help me. And you've shown me what you can do. For you as a business, we've now got all the information we need so we can make really good decisions. And because it's in our email marketing system, if some of that follow-up, if all of that sales process is automated because of an automation based on those tags, then so be it. That's what it is for us. Like that delivery process is automated. So that's the way we do it. Does that answer your question?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then some. Yeah, that's great. That is great because you want to get people get them what they need immediately because they're probably in that buying pocket right now where they're answering the questions about their pain points. Like they're most prone to being open to buying something to solve that problem. So I love that.
So let me just jump into that because the thing is as well is if they've just joined your list, or you could use this as the opt-in, the lead generation thing on your podcast. Hey, let's find out your biggest opportunity for the biggest win in your podcast right now. We actually have another guy who teaches podcast for business podcasting who's doing this exact funnel. So he's using ResponseSuite. That's how I know who he is. And he's a friend of ours. He says, find out what your biggest opportunity with your podcast is right now. Go take the quiz at the quiz for my podcast, whatever it is.com. They go, they check it out. And now, but the really important thing is you have to frame that as a benefit to them, not tell me how I can help you.
Yeah.
No, that's still about you. Even though it's telling me how I can help you, it's still kind of about you. What you want to do instead is say, let's find and pinpoint your biggest opportunity for growth in your email marketing, for your podcast, and give you the results that you really need. That's really important. So let's make it all about them.
Yeah, exactly. Love that. And that's how you're going to move. That for me, personally, to add to that, like that's how I've found the best success in moving people into a phone call or the Facebook group or onto my email list is like, it's all about them. It's 100%, not, 100%. Like, I want to give you this free gift and I know it's going to help you. Here's what you do to go get it. X, Y, Z, right?
And actually what you said before was really interesting, because if you do this quiz, we do the quiz at the moment as part of our getting to know you sequence. So they join through the Facebook group or whatever, and then we send them the quiz. What's really interesting about sending the quiz straight away is they're currently at their highest level of interest in you that they're ever going to be at. The moment they join your list, you're the best thing since sliced bread, as Rob often says when we're speaking, right? And after that, guess what's happening? Unfortunately, your popularity is dropping off, just dropping and dropping and dropping. So at that moment that they care about you the most, ask them more questions, because they're going to give you that information. They are most likely to give that information at that point. And then you've got their attention, you've got that information, and now you give them solutions to their exact problem. So you're actually getting people to like you by actually helping them. Not doing slimy old-fashioned email marketing where you don't really tell them how to do anything. Tell them what, but not the how. No, tell them how.
Yeah, I love that. Anything else to add, Rob, before Rob closing up and tell them where people can find out more about you?
No, I think this is such an important thing. And I think all podcasters will wish they'd done this sooner. Like the minute they start doing this, the minute they start bringing people over and find out more about them. And do you know what? That can impact all of your like future podcasting. You get to find out, well, what is it that people really want help with? Because you will pay attention to the data. While it's lovely to segment people and send them in all different directions, you will start to notice trends in data. So that gets to enhance all of your future marketing going forward, gets to shape the decisions about the kind of people you try and bring in future. Wow, those people that we're bringing in and are voting this in the survey, wow, they are just more profitable subscribers than the others. Let's focus on them. Like, it drives so many decisions, as well as making a perfect journey for every individual subscriber. This bit is the thing that I think most people will wish they'd started doing earlier.
That data is super, super powerful once you have it at your disposal. Rob, Kennedy, where can people who are in the Facebook group and also in the podcast learn more about you guys? I think I have a hunch of where it's at, but go ahead and tell them.
Yeah, surprisingly, it is our Facebook group. Literally, if you want to figure out how you can apply this stuff to your world, your podcast, your business, how does this stuff work for you? Because all of our businesses are different, and how you apply these things are slightly different. We'd love to we hang out in our Facebook group. It's called the Email Marketing Show Community, as you probably guessed. And literally we hang out in there like way too much. We should actually get some work done. But yeah, we're in there all the time. On the way in, if you want to actually see these daily emails that are funny, actually valuable, and make sales every day, so you can see how it's done, you'll be given the opportunity to give us your email address on the way in. You can do that or not. It's up to you. And also, of course, the podcast, Rob, right?
Yeah, of course. So you can find us at theemailmarketingshow.com, or just search on your favorite podcast player for the Email Marketing Show. It'll pop right up. Hopefully we're getting ranked for email marketing. Who knows? But goes for the Email Marketing Show. And you better find us. It's 1 week it's us, then the next week it's a guest, then the next week it's us, then the next week it's a guest. And I could go on, but you get the idea.
Love it. Guys, thanks so much for being on the Facebook Live and also on the podcast. This is awesome. I appreciate you.
Our pleasure. Thanks, man.